The all-new Yamaha V6 Offshore F350. It's a featherweight knockout, the lightest 350 horsepower outboard on the water, exhilarating boating and incredible control in a powerfully light design. The Yamaha V6 Offshore F350.
The Fishing News is sponsored by these fine partners.
It's Thursday, June 27th, heading into the month of July on Monday. The return of our one fish bag limit on black sea bass in New Jersey. And then, of course, we're heading straight into the holiday weekend, July 4th, here at the Jersey Shore. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We still have 1 month or 1 weekend to go in this month of June before we start thinking about a shortened work week and intensified crowds at our favorite waters on July 4th. I'm Jim Hutchinson with the New Jersey Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman Magazine. Now, last week we were in the midst of a heat wave, heading into a full moon weekend with a lot of south winds, and I think a lot of those variables had a real big impact on our coastal fishing, especially inshore and back bay. It certainly did with me. I kind of felt on Saturday like I was in a batting slump. I was just doing terribly. Couldn't buy a hit. I was waving at sliders in the dirt. Hoping that changes in the weekend ahead. Weather-wise, here at the Jersey Shore, where I am in Northern Ocean County at least, there's been a good deal of wind to contend with, especially to start this week. Then came up southwesterly on Wednesday. It's turning westerly on Thursday the 27th. We're supposed to see northeast winds in the forecast, gusting to 20 knots on Friday, and we'll see what that does for ocean water temperatures heading into this weekend. It has been a bit chilly on the ocean front. That southerly really blew a lot of, like we talked about it last week, blowing a lot of that surface, warmer surface water to the south shore of Long Island. Then we get the upwelling, and we had some really cold water locally. My buddy was fishing on the Manasquan on Saturday. Same time I was on the other side, on the south side of the Point Pleasant Canal. But he's fishing the incoming tide Saturday morning on the Manasquan, had water temperatures in the low to mid 50s. Meanwhile, barely 2 miles away where I was on the south side of Point Pleasant Canal, in the upper stretches of Barnegat Bay, we had water temperatures in the 70s. But again, with a northeast on Friday, let's see how that changes the water temperatures by Saturday and Sunday as the southerlies come in again for the weekend. Now, if you're hoping to head offshore this weekend, you'll probably be doing a lot of regular checks on the NOAA marine weather forecast as winds continue to switch around from various directions. A quick look on Wednesday midweek showed a couple of cold fronts expected to move through the region, with Saturday appearing, anyway, midweek, Saturday appearing to be the best bet for hitting the canyon grounds from the Hudson to the Baltimore. We do have some more yellowfin reports in our fishing reports this week at thefisherman.com, so the offshore opportunities are really starting to take off. We do have some bluefin. There's some big eye on the offshore canyons as well. We'll take a look at a few of the latest catches in the region, fluke, blues, and a few more exotics. But first, let's take a look at what you'll find this week in the July edition of the Fisherman Magazine. It hits newsstands, tackle shops, and your subscriptions. Your mailboxes should have these by today, Friday at the latest. I'm hoping you get them early. But given the fact that species on tap here for this weekend are covered in the July edition of the Fisherman Magazine, I think it's appropriate we take a look. It's got Tie Man's Chuck Manny on the cover, along with Jackpot Sport Fishing's Captain Ben Gilmore. Yeah, he came up from Costa Rica last month for Striper Quest 24. It's the official launch of our Northeast striped bass study and continued tagging of striped bass with our friends from Gray Fish Tag Research. By the way, Chuck's on the cover of the July edition, but he also let me know that he's out this week and he's still tagging. He was out with Alex Cadian. They tagged a few big girls on Tuesday off Monmouth County. So the big striped bass, they're still around. They're just thinning out, but there's still big fish around. And there's still stripers to be had throughout the stretches along front, the front beaches and out back as well. A lot of resident stripers, but that was still there. Again, back to that July edition, turn to the glossy table of contents for July. You'll find a full write-up on Striper Quest on page 40G with all the Striper Quest tagging winners, as well as a unique tag return from a striped bass that was named Timon 2, which Chuck tagged last November. If you remember in the video fishing forecast going back to Easter, Jenny Ackerman found that tag on Good Friday, looking along the beaches of Lavalette. So the information that's in that tag, it's now in the July edition of the Fisherman Magazine. Pick up freshwater to saltwater crossover bass tactics with Captain Mike Roy, with some hands-on advice from Bass Pro Mike Iaconelli. Solo fluking tips from Wicked Mike to help us all get away from the fleet and get our own doormats. Topwater yellowfin tactics with Captain Christian Awe, and a deep dive into fishing reel innovation with our own Captain John Raguso. Now, in addition to those monthly glossy features, a second table of contents inside the New Jersey Delaware Bay edition reveals another 5 feature stories. A lot of focus in this edition on the summer surf options. Eric Burnley, he's got Delaware Bayshore covered. Somebody had a question in our YouTube from last week about Indian River Inlet. You'll find it in the July edition. Nick Honachewski focuses on beach, bulkhead, and jetty options for Fluke. And Bob Misak picks up on the tail end of an incredible run of black drum and bluefish. Also check out that boat review in the July edition as well. This is the Steiger 255 Miami. This classic hardcore fishing machine with Downey style lines has a new trick up its sleeve. Check out the latest video on our YouTube channel. Publisher Mike Caruso sits down with Alan Steiger himself to reveal the latest boating and fishing technology, how they've been incorporated into the tried and true Steiger Craft 255 Miami. You can click on the card in this week's video fishing forecast. I'll put the link in the video description, but you can find all the details as well inside the July edition of the Fisherman Magazine. I mentioned the blues and drum. Andy at Riptide Bait and Tackle says that both blues and drumfish, black drum, they're still around on the rock as of this weekend, though kingfish are starting to take over in the surf. You'll get a few kingfish tips in that July edition. I believe you can find some in Eric's column and also in Bob Misak's article as well. Fluking by Shore. That full story by Nick Honachewski inside that July edition, it's prime time right now. Perhaps after the Northeast on Friday, some warmer water in the surf and everything will get mixed up and the disoriented baits are all over the place. That's when Fluke tend to key in and feed right there in the wash for this weekend. So you can get all the details in that July edition. Gearing up for the summer surf is all about a light approach. Whether it's Fluke, bonita, Spanish mackerel, I'm hoping we see some of those. But you want a comfortable outfit, not too small a rod, of course. But you do need some backbone for throwing some of those bucktails around. And also, you don't know what you're going to encounter in the surf at any point during the season. You don't want a light, whippy outfit if you're going to tangle with a cow-nose ray that picks up your bait. I just picked up a new Saltex 2 Series rod, a 7.7, that I've paired with a Penn Spinfisher 6 that you may see me playing around with in the Ocean County surf, even in this weekend coming ahead. But I'll tell you what, on this week's Open Boat, Jenny Ackerman shares some of her personal tips and tactics and her favorite style outfit. I'm anxious to find out if anything that I'm using in the summer surf meshes anything close to what Jenny's got.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Open Boat. Today, I'm out here fishing the beach. I figured I'd give you a little rundown on the perfect beach summertime combo. So what I have right here, I have my koi fish rod. I built it, I love this thing. It's a 791. Perfect size rod, 791 up to 8 foot. That's my perfect range for when I'm fishing off the beach. Now, pairing your reel with that 8-foot rod, I like to do a 3000 size reel. Like I have a 3000 size Stratic on here. Another fan favorite of mine is the Penn Battle DX. Penns are excellent reels, so are Stratics, Daiwa BGMQ 3000, whatever floats your boat. Everyone has a personal preference, but that's just the perfect combo. It's nice and light, it's comfortable. Like I'm walking the beach till sundown, trying to scrape up a Fluke or a Cocktail Blue. So you want to be comfortable with a nicely balanced rod. I'll catch you guys on next week's Open Boat, if I catch a fish.
And now, the Dream Boat Fishing Challenge entries for the week. We had 4 entries in the Fluke category. First, we have Long Island subscriber Brian Polsinelli with his entry at 11.68 pounds. Then we have another Long Island subscriber, Mark Zaluski, with his Fluke weighing in at 8.1 pounds. Our third entry comes in from New England subscriber Mike A. Briggs, scaling in at 12.47 pounds. And the fourth entry is Michael Blonsky with his Fluke, coming in at 9.8 pounds. The Sea Robin category had 1 entry, and that was from New England subscriber Fernando Ledge, taking the 9th spot, weighing in at 2.18 pounds. So the standing looks like this. Anthony Savino is still at 19 points, Christopher Jones at 12, and Frank Shea at 10. Just a reminder, for your chance to win the grand prize Steigercraft powered by Yamaha and other great prizes, you need to be a subscriber to the Fisherman Magazine and use a 2024 entry form filled out completely, available at thefisherman.com/contests.
No boat, no problem. There are plenty of places to score a fluke or two from shore. And you saw that video before. Jenny's out front along the open beaches. But you can go on the backside. You can go on the piers and bulkheads, the jetties, simple bucktail, tipped with gulp or fish bites. Or if you're like Dr. Cool here, Stockton professor Adam Aguiar, find those riverside locations somewhere for a decent score. A ton of shorts, Adam told me this week. But he did manage this 23-incher that he said weighed in at just about 4 pounds. You also have more exotics moving in along the front beaches and inlets at this point. Groins, jetties, jetty rocks. Steve Carlo was visiting from New York over the weekend, tossing around a Yozori Hydro Minnow LC at the North Jetty at Island Beach State Park on Saturday. He said blues were chasing baits around and he enjoyed a surprise hookup with this houndfish. Pretty big one, I would say. The question, of course, can you eat houndfish? Well, after a quick online search, thank you, Google, the common theme I found was yes. But most folks are turned off by the fact that houndfish have blue bones and a rather grayish hue, a greenish hue on the meat. I did find an outfit from Panama that said houndfish are, quote, easy to fillet, they taste excellent, very similar to rainbow trout. The meat cooks up clean, white, delicate, very nice flavor. That said, the folks at Coiba Adventures in Panama also said, quote, normally we always throw them back. Normally always. Normally always, the skippers I know down working in the back bays of Cape May County waters are letting all of those sheep's head go that they catch. So it's mostly catch and release for a lot of those folks who target these critters on a regular basis every season. Certainly letting the jumbos go free is smart, but I ain't gonna lie. Sheep's head is quite tasty. And one fish of this size by Grant Johnson on his kayak this week makes a great meal for a couple of folks, especially blackened on a cast iron pan. For the record, Grant said he had 7 of them on his kayak this week, somewhere in South Jersey. Now, in last week's video, I talked up the Minn Kota trolling motor, how valuable of a tool it is for me, fluke fishing, wind against tide, and also spot locking on structure. It's interesting to me to note how many kayakers, too, are enjoying the same technology I have on the bow of my center console. So you got the pedal, the paddle in case of an emergency, and now the trolling motor, as you see in this old town that Ryan from South Jersey Yak Fishing is using. You'll find Ryan's YouTube channel, South Jersey Yak Fishing. Check out all his stuff. But he was out on Saturday targeting sheep's head at a local bridge, I'm assuming someplace in Cape May County, spot locked tight to the structure, ended up with a short and out of season tog that grabbed his crab baited jig. Fishing for sheep's head is very much the same as tog if you're tog jigging. Crab on a jig head, vertical. But no one informed this gator bluefish that blackfish was out of season in New Jersey. Ryan said he and the bluefish quickly came to an agreement and decided to split the fish, although it appears the bluefish got the better half of that deal. Ryan did say, quote, the sheep's head bite is on fire, which is good news for those in South Jersey all the way down into Delaware looking for another option to score near shore, inshore, and back bay. Now, in terms of good eating, don't forget that one fish bag limit, sea bass, returns on Monday, just like I said. Monday, July 1st. One fish, 12.5 inches, July and August here in New Jersey. Now, in Delaware, it's a 15 fish bag now, 13-inch size limit, while those crossing over into New York waters, remember, 16.5 inches, 3 per angler. That jumbo sea bass fishery just opened in New York this past Sunday and continues through August 31st, when the bag limit will go to 6 fish as of September 1st. Which brings me to a reminder to anyone traveling on water across state boundaries. A guy I know called me this week. He said his buddy got busted up in New York because he had an 18-inch fluke in the box while he was transiting through New York waters, got boarded, and of course the minimum fluke size in New York is 19 inches. He said, I wasn't fishing, it was in transit. Well, folks, you gotta know where you are at all times. There's really no reciprocation between New York and New Jersey and Delaware on licensing, registration, and regulations, right? So you wanna go to page 48 of the New Jersey Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman Magazine, July edition, when you get it. You'll find the regs that are printed for New York, New Jersey, and Delaware, side by side. Tear it out, laminate it, keep it handy when you're fishing. You can match it up as you're across state boundaries. There's no reciprocation. You need to have your license and registration in both states if you're going to be traveling through and fishing in both waters. And you got to go by the more restrictive regulations in whichever state you're fishing, right? Because you're going to have to transit back and forth. So each state in which you're fishing, you're going to have to go by the tighter regulations, because if New York has tighter regulations than New Jersey, you got to go by theirs. If you're in New Jersey and New York, you got to go by theirs. You don't want to get boarded. For example, if you're a Delaware saltwater angler and you end up across the north side of Delaware Bay, just off of Fortescue, and you catch a 20-inch striped bass come this Monday, you can't put that fish in the box because you're in New Jersey at that point. The regs aren't based on your personal port of call. They follow you wherever you go. Did you know that Delaware had a summer slot? It's in place July 1st through August 31st, during which point Delaware Bay, river, and tributaries in Delaware waters, it's one striper from 20 to 24 inches in length. Take a look at the screen. I've got it. This is the Delaware regulations. You'll see it. You'll also see a difference in spotted sea trout in Delaware, different from us. Well, I've got some news to share on that front here in the Garden State. Plus, there's a hearing today on Capitol Hill with recreational fishing at the forefront. That's 2 minutes away. But first, let's head west to the mountains. An on-water forecast in the Poconos with George Schauer, the Pocono Outdoors guy.
Well, hey, thanks, Jim. You know, the heat is on again this week, and a lot of the big lakes, the state parks, the guys are just crowded with those recreational folks out there with their jet skis. It gets really hard for us anglers to get out there and wet a line. Do what we're doing out here, out there in the smaller lakes, ponds, doing a little fun fishing, the small bass. We got some crappie, we got some bluegills out here. Always a great place to go and wet a line when the fishing gets a little tough. I like my good friend Eric Goodstall. He got away from those trout with this heat. He managed to get himself into a couple really nice panfish, a variety of panfish on a fly, working one of those foamy bugs out on the topwater, getting them. So great work there, Eric. Also, my good friend Josh Taylor wanted to remind me that, you know, just because the weather gets warm again, you can always get out for those carp. Unfortunately, most people think of carp as a trash fish, but honestly, guys, it's a really good game fish. They're good for the lake or wherever you're fishing them, so don't dismiss the carp when you're out fishing. Same with the catfish. Guys are out getting the catfish. Good channel cats all over in the Lehigh, even the Delaware. Plenty of catfish there, especially those flatheads if you're into that kind of fish and want to spend the night out on the river. Also, looking for the stripers still. Guys are still out getting them on Beltsville and Wallenpaupack. Just a tip though, with this heat, guys, don't fight them real long. If you're going to get into stripers, get them up to the boat, get them released and back into that deep water, unless you plan to keep them. So some good tips there. Guys, I hope you get out and get some fish. Stay cool, but get out and get on them. From Pennsylvania, I'm George, your Pocono Outdoors guy.
We had 2 entries in the Coastal Kayak Clash this week. Gary Innes of New England entered a 25.25-inch Fluke. Then Bob Wagner of New Jersey entered a 31-inch Fluke, besting his 27-inch entry. Now, Bob Wagner and Justin Oser are still stuck in a virtual tie at the top with 9 points apiece, but because Bob Wagner has bigger fish on the board, he holds the top position. Mike Radoszewski is in 3rd place, sitting well in striking distance with 6 points. For all the details on how to enter, visit thefisherman.com/contests.
So the spotted sea trout, or speckled trout, also referred to simply as a speck. In Delaware, there's no bag limit on this species and a 12-inch size limit. Now, here in New Jersey, when those specks appear predominantly in Cape May waters at the end of the summer into the fall, the regulations for speckled trout are the same as weak fish. 1 fish at 13 inches. Now, the reason for this conundrum is the fact that New Jersey law has always considered weak fish the same as speckled trout, even though they are different species with a different management approach. I've often editorialized about this in the Fisherman Magazine, and I've asked this question to the New Jersey Marine Fisheries Council at so many meetings over the past 6 years, to the point that the eyes of DEP staffers roll back into the back of their heads every time I step up to address the council. So here at the Fisherman Magazine, we cover news related to recreational fishing. And I say that with a laugh because nobody else covers this. You're not going to find this news about fishing anywhere else. And we've been doing that here in New Jersey for the past 51 years. I've been doing it for about 20. When you get to that July edition, turn to page 6. You'll see the news brief section. Take note of the story that I wrote called NJ Spotted Sea Trout Regulations to Change. The New Jersey Marine Fisheries Council will meet on Thursday, July 11th, 5 p.m. at the Galloway Township branch of the Atlantic County Library. That's on Jimmy Leeds Road, 5 p.m. And on the agenda is speckled trout. So this long and winding road, as the legal eagles in Trenton can continue to figure out how to disconnect weak fish and spotted trout, will finally give way to public comment on June 11th for folks to contribute to what they actually want out of a speckled trout regulation for maybe 2024, certainly for 2025. So that's on the docket. It's finally happening. So if you like targeting South Jersey specks, or you have a tackle or charter business, especially in Cape May County, and you expect to see a bump in business because they're going to untangle specks from weak fish, you want to be in Galloway Township, July 11th, 5 p.m., and participate in this discussion. Now, another item you'll find in the July edition of the Fisherman Magazine is my editor's log on page 3. Many folks like them, many folks don't. But in my opinion, some things just can't be left unsaid. The Marine Recreational Information Program, MRIP, for example, that's the random survey used by the federal government to ratchet down our regulations impacting our ability to responsibly access key fisheries, like black sea bass or summer flounder. We often complain about the season, size, and bag, a 1 sea bass limit, bycatch allowance for the summer, for example, when considering, as I mentioned before, Delaware anglers have a 15 fish bag limit from May 15th all the way through the month of September. However, it could be worse. As you'll read in this editorial, it's called Pound for Pound. Atlantic coastal anglers in Florida have a 1-day red snapper fishery coming up on Friday, July 12th. 1 day. Meanwhile, North Carolina anglers will have no flounder fishery at all this season. You guys pay for that service? License? Really? This management mess, in my opinion, is all due to the federal law and MRIP. That's the bottom line. Anyway, this week, today actually, there's a hearing on Capitol Hill. It's already underway. It's probably over by the time you see this video fishing forecast. Some folks don't like to mix their politics and fishing, But when you consider that members of Congress are currently debating legislation that directly impacts our access to fisheries, sometimes it's nice to know how your fish sausages are stuffed and by whom. Members of the Congressional Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries meet Thursday, June 27th, 9:30 a.m. to discuss and debate 4 different bills currently in the House. 2 in particular have big impacts to us as saltwater anglers. They actually all would, but 2 of them specifically deal with issues often discussed around the docks here at the Jersey Shore. One is H.R. 8704. That's sponsored by a Georgia congressman named Buddy Carter. Deals with the North Atlantic right whale and NOAA's continuing efforts to implement a speed restriction along the Atlantic coast on boats 35 feet and up. Essentially what this bill do, should it ever become law, would provide grant funding to help protect these whales without demonizing our local fishermen. Rather than slap a senseless speed restriction on folks with 35-foot center consoles, this would take, shall we say, a more holistic approach to protecting whales through advanced technology. But on the recreational data collection front, I'm pretty interested in seeing how this other bill, H.R. 8705, gets debated in Congress. Sponsored by Congressman Garrett Graves of Louisiana. The Fisheries Data Modernization and Accuracy Act of 2024 seeks to reform MRIP to ensure that the best available science and data are used by NOAA as it makes these fisheries management decisions. Now, NOAA Fisheries last summer admitted that their fishing effort surveys are probably overestimating angler effort by as much as 40%, which ultimately means our government admits that their MRIP data has us catching nearly twice as many fish as we're actually catching in the real world. And that will negatively impact our regulations. So the Graves bill being debated in Congress would encourage better management decisions at the federal level, and it would also provide states the ability to create their own recreational catch collection program for recreational fishing data. So if such a program is created, NOAA would be required to use the data that the state collects. In turn, it too establishes a grant program to give to states to develop their own catch estimates. Now, personally, I'd much rather see the New Jersey Division of Fish and Wildlife getting the funding to gather better angler effort data for use in surveys and assessments, as opposed to folks at the federal level. But at the very least, the recreational data collection issue is being addressed by members of Congress on Capitol Hill, which I guess is nice to see. Martha Guyas from the American Sport Fishing Association, she's going to testify on behalf of that Graves bill, while Jeff Strong from Strong's Marine of Long Island will be there as a witness for the Carter bill on coastal speed limits and whales. I wish you both luck. By the way, one more political note. That House Natural Resources Committee that ultimately manages how you and I are able to fish and what we can catch, there are 45 members of Congress on that committee, including political extremists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Lauren Boebert, but not a single representative from New Jersey, Delaware, or Pennsylvania. Like I said in my editor's log in the July edition, anglers are getting pounded. The Raritan Bay Anglers, they're hosting their 34th annual Fluke tournament on July 20th. I bring that up now because the entry fee is still just $100 until Monday, July 1st. After that, it's going to cost you $1.25. So if you're fishing that July 20th event, pre-register by Monday to save the $25. Raritan Bay Anglers Fishing Club.com. Get details in the July edition of the Fisherman Magazine. Got a report? Nice fish to share? Maybe even a video? How about an uncle in Nigeria who's going to leave me $10 billion? You don't have to email me about that, but you can email me your catch reports. And if you have information you'd like to share in the Fisherman Magazine or in this video, email me, jhutchinson@thefisherman.com. Catch him up, my friends. Enjoy the weekend. We're going to come to you a little bit earlier next week so you can properly plan what I hope you have, a 4-day weekend around the 4th. See you later.